Good evening. We're going to get going. I know there are some people who are still coming. I don't think they plan time for the rain, but we're going to get started with my introduction. Carol and I are pleased to have you all here tonight on this spring evening. Yes, spring. This is hopeful speaking. A little bit of housekeeping. There's a door there, the other door if we have to get out of here fast for any reason, and I ask you to turn off your cell phones and other electronic devices. I'm going to do a very brief introduction, briefer than normal because I have a cold. And then Andrew will have the floor, and then after we're done, books are at the front desk with the homemade cookies that Karen made and the cider, and Andrew will stay back here to sign books and chat with people further. Come on in, there's lots of chairs. I'm just doing the introduction, it's not important. Oh yeah, and if you see us moving the chairs aside, it's not to rush you at all, it's just to get stuff out of the way. We have an amazingly full calendar through July right now, if you count the Canaan reading series, which we do the books for. Next week, next Wednesday, James Wright is going to be speaking on his book, Enduring Vietnam. And then in May, we have Peter Heller, Stephen Kiernan, Jeffrey Lent. And in June, we are 99% sure we're going to be doing a celebration of Grace Paley's writing because there's a new anthology of her work. So her daughter and the other editor of the book will be here the middle Wednesday in June. And to find out about all this stuff, I encourage you to sign up for our newsletter. It goes out every other week, and you can always check our website. And also, for those of you who haven't signed up for it, the Book Jam blog comes out weekly. It's two women from Norwich, and they did a 3-question interview with our author tonight, so you could get some inside scoop on who's coming. So without further ado, I want to welcome Andrew to Norwich, and I neglected to ask you how to pronounce your last name, so I'm not even going to stumble over it. Sorry. He grew up in Pennsylvania and came to Vermont to attend Middlebury College, where he graduated in 2011 with a BA in Environmental Science Studies. He set out on his trip with a quote, with a vague idea that it would be, quote, like a graduate program in the human experience. And I just meant to make sure you don't tell my daughter that, who's also graduating in environmental studies. He spent the next 11 months walking across the United States, recording interviews with people from all walks of life that he met along the way. And from his writings, he co-produced a radio documentary about his travels, and you might have caught that on This American Life. And currently, Andrew's based in Northampton, which is not that far away, and he teaches walking and listening as practices in connective presence, which I assume he's going to elaborate on a little bit this evening. And in reading over the book, at heart, he's a storyteller who also collects other people's stories to share with us. Please help me welcome Andrew.
Tell us how to pronounce it.
I'm getting there, just arriving. It's Forsthoefel. Forsthoefel.
Okay.
Forsthoefel.
Although I've recently adopted a grandmother. She's from Germany, and my name is originally German. And when I introduced myself as Andrew Forsthoefel, she said, no. What's your name? Andrew No. Forsthoefel. Something like that. She said, Andrew, it's very important that you introduce yourself correctly. People need to know. So I'm here to talk about my walk across America. But I will say that if I was here to do just that, and if I was doing nothing but tell these stories about this experience I had, at this point, telling them as many times as I've told them, I'd probably be insane right now. Mm-hmm. And where I'm finding some energy and aliveness is in investigating what made these stories possible. What was it in my approach to people? What constituent parts of my presence made these kinds of connections possible, these kinds of conversations. And surely plenty of forces outside of my control completely had everything to do with what happened here. The fact that I'm male had a lot to do with what unfolded with people. The fact that I'm white had everything to do with how people interacted with me. The fact that I didn't have facial hair at the time. You know, like there are all these subtle little ingredients that determined what unfolded. But a big part of it, I've come to believe, was my role as listener. My willingness to listen and my eventual ability to do so. Because I learned that listening is an ability or a skill that had to be learned, that has to be learned. It's not something that anyone's born with, and it's not something that eventually, inevitably happens with age. It's something that I had to learn. And if it's something that one has to learn, then it's possible that one might never learn it. And so, again, I find a lot of energy and excitement about sharing what I've learned and continuing to do so right here, right now, which is an interesting practice. You know, one thing I've come to believe about listening is that it's an apprenticeship from which there isn't a single moment's rest. So having committed myself to this apprenticeship with this walk, it means it looks like this right now. And it's just an unusual experience to be engaged in my listening practice while being witnessed by so many people. You know, to be open. Because that's what the listener is. The listener is open. The listener is ready to receive whatever comes. So ready to receive the looks you're giving me, ready to receive whatever happens through me. I mean, I've been up here in this situation and I've started crying while telling a story. Learning how to listen to that too and allow that too. So I'm doing this with myself, which is how I'm able to do it with other people. You know, and again, learning the whole way. But this was the beginning for me. This was the beginning of realizing, whoa, there's a lot to this listening thing. Who knew? It wasn't something I was taught. I was taught the rudimentary basics in kindergarten. You know, do this, don't do that. And then in elementary school and middle school and high school and onward, there was sort of this assumption that I was listening if I was able to regurgitate what I had just heard. And what I began to realize on this walk is that listening has something to do with being willing to let go of knowing how something's going to go. Having the humility to slow down, ask an earnest question, sincerely, and then hush. And again, I was trained to listen in such a way that I was using it as a weapon. You know, I'm going to listen so that I can find the weaknesses in your argument and then systematically dismantle you. And there's a function to that kind of listening. I wouldn't actually call that listening. I would call that, argumentation, debate, critical thinking. Those are important tools. But there's this other tool that's so highly underutilized in this society called listening, which again has something to do with being willing not to know exactly what's going to happen. Being willing to receive whatever does happen from someone. Which gets interesting when what you are served by someone is something you find loathsome. It gets interesting when what you are served by someone is something you find repellent or something you know is causing harm in the world. How do you receive that? it's something I'm not here telling you I have the answer to this stuff. I'm in this apprenticeship learning. But I think it's important that we learn, because I think what's happening in this country today is we're finding, we're bumping up against the limits of what critical thinking, argumentation, and debate make possible. Again, these are important tools that we need, but there is something that becomes possible in that magical, alchemical space of listening that is not possible in the battleground of a debate. So, I'm not saying this is something we should get rid of, obviously. It has got us to where we are. But in order to get where we need to go, a more beautiful world, that is not founded on violence and retribution, domination, competition. In order to get to a world of peace, really, we are also going to need listening. Because when I'm listening to you, I'm not at war with you. So I'm not interested in converting you to anything, persuading you, changing you in any way. I'm ready, again, to receive you however you are, whatever you choose to offer me, even if it's your silence, even if it's deceit, even if it's that loathsome thing. I'm not going to reciprocate your hatred with mine. I'm not going to get dragged back into that world of malice, violence, and retribution. I'm going to stay here, abiding in the role of listener. And when I offer you that kind of energy, when I'm not coming at you with all of my well-sharpened daggers, and when I'm not even holding up my shield, when I'm saying, hey, I'm ready to receive this, and it may come at a cost. It may hurt me. And I'm willing to communicate that to you without weaponizing my language, even in the slightest bit. When I'm giving you that kind of presence, it is remarkably disarming. Sit with what imagine receiving that from somebody. It has a way of doing something that no well-reasoned, finely articulated, bullet-pointed argument can do. Again, not that those aren't important. We need those. But that is happening within a paradigm of competition. And, okay, I'm in the arena, I've got my thing, you've got yours, and we're going to spar, and let's see who comes out on top. And I'm going to do what I can to dominate. Because that's the name of the game in debate, Meanwhile, when we're in the arena of listening, when we're in the it's not even an arena, it's a sanctuary. When we're in the sanctuary of listening, you can let down your armor. You can let down your shield. You can lay down your weapons. And then openness becomes possible. And it's safe for you to explore something else. So there's this paradoxical way in which listening unconditionally, with the intention to understand, with the intention not to harm, with the intention to love even. But if love isn't possible, we'll just stick with understanding. And if I can't understand you, well, it's going to at least be the intention not to harm. When I'm coming at you in that way, you are able, one is able to wonder about how else things might be. And that's what I began to see with people, I'll tell you a story. Who here has read the book, by the way? Anyone yet? It's pretty new. It's a baby in the world. Still learning how to walk. Okay, nice. Good. So none of you have heard this story. So I'm walking along on the road. This is how all my stories begin. Walking along on the road. and I'm approaching New Orleans. And people warned me about walking through New Orleans. They said, you know, whatever you do, don't walk through New Orleans. They'll shoot you for the shirt off your back. They'll take everything you have. And I had heard that from people about various towns in the South. And I took it to be a veiled manifestation of racism. Don't walk through that, you know. And so, after hearing this, I knew exactly where I was going to walk. Right through New Orleans. Let's find out, boots on the ground, what's for real. Let's find out who these people are for real. Who we are. Face to face. No middleman. I'm walking through, approaching the outskirts of town, feeling a little nervous. Sun is setting. I'm thousands of miles, over 1,000 miles from home. Vulnerable. Completely vulnerable on the highway. This thing that was built for metal machines that go 80 miles an hour. And here I am, this basically naked turtle out of its shell, walking along the highway. So I'm, just to give you a sense of, you know, how I'm feeling in this moment. Not so different from how I'm feeling in this actual moment. So, turtle out of its shell. I don't know any of you, you know. And there's offering in that. I hope there's something. Anyways, coming into town, I hear behind me someone go, "Hey!" Okay, sounded a little, I don't know if I want to, you know, I kept walking. Then I hear, "Hey you, walker!" Thinking, he's probably talking about me. I don't think there are many other walkers on this highway. I turn around and he's this white guy, middle-aged, standing on his porch above the highway, glowering down at me. I cross the road to go see him. I say, "Hey, what's going on?" He goes, "What are you doing?" I said, "Oh, well, I'm Andrew. I'm walking across America, listening to people's stories. I started in Philadelphia. I'm heading to California, if I can get that far." "Philadelphia? Who the fuck invited you down here?" "Damn Yankee." And it felt real. You know, people joked about the Yankee thing, but this time it felt real. Like there was... But even with that, I was trying to stay connected to this intention to listen, which involves and approaches everything I've been sharing so far about it. That intention to, hey, whatever you got, I'm here for you. I'm not going to reciprocate your violence, your verbal. I'm not gonna go there with you. I know who I am. I know why I'm here. Tried to look at him in that way. I was scared though. So I did my best. He goes, "Well, you're standing on neutral ground right now, but as soon as you come onto my lawn, that's my territory." I said, "Okay. I'm not here to cause any problems, man. I really am just here to listen. And if you're not interested, I'll move on." I wasn't smiling like I am now. I wonder how I would do now. You know, all these years later, this was 5 years ago. I wonder how I would do in a situation like that now. I'd like to think that my faith in it has grown such that I wouldn't feel as jittery as I often did back then. But who knows, maybe jitteriness would come. Anyways, I start walking away, and he goes, "Hey, wait, you like beer?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, You want one?" I said, "Okay." Knowing full well that my acceptance of his invitation might come at a cost, the likes of which I didn't know. I didn't know what it might cost me. But I took him up on it anyway. So I walked up to his porch, and he had just sort of like, he had put himself out there a little bit. You know, God, in this society, like, how many of you reached out to a stranger today? Okay, we got 1, 2, amazing, 3, nice. How many of you have reached out to a stranger this week? Cool. How many of you invited a stranger into your house? Nice. Wow, I'm impressed. It is Vermont.
And New Hampshire.
And New Hampshire. Excuse me. Maybe this doesn't prove my point. I don't know. We don't do it much. You know, we are in this atomized society, and I'll speak for myself, I get comfortable in my little bubble. I don't want to, it's easy in here. I don't, to pop the bubble, to shatter it and say, hey, come on in, who are you? I want to know who you are. Yeah, it's going to jam up my whole day. I had an idea of how my day was going to go, and I have all these obligations, but I want to know who you are. And I've got some beer inside. You want to join me? Very rare. So, and this guy was clearly conditioned by so much fear. And he had just put himself out there. He sucked himself back in. I got onto his porch and he said, hey, you gotta leave your backpack outside. I don't want you to pull a gun on me or something like that. Right back in. And he said, hey, before, you got an ID or something? Give me your ID. And as if he had some sort of credibility, I gave him my ID. I'm like, oh, okay, sure. And he's looking at it, he's like, huh. I used to work at a liquor store, and this looks like a fake. So he's back in that world of power, domination, alpha stuff, I'm uninterested in playing these games. But I also start to get a little scared, I'm like, come on, man, are you serious? I reach out for it, he's like, And again, I'm trying to abide in my world. Knowing that somewhere within this guy, there is a kernel of humanity that is worth my time, worth my attention, that's worthy. Somewhere, it's there. I know it. And maybe I can't see it yet, but he's human, so it's there somewhere. And I'm holding on to this hope that maybe I'll get to see it if I hang in there with him long enough. Intending to take care of myself at the same time. So that's what I'm relating to. And all of these, I'm articulating these things now, having had 5 years to reflect upon them. At the time, I wasn't talking like this. I was just doing it. I was 23 years old, and then turned 24 on the road, and just stumbling into this new world that's possible with listening. Not with words, with the lived action, embodied on the road, day after day, person after person after person. So much practice. It really was a graduate. It was a PhD program. I'm not saying I passed it. I'm not saying it's done, but it was an intense crucible. Anyways, I come into the guy's house, and in that moment, everything changes, because now he was vulnerable too. I'm getting to see his home. The external reflection of one's internal space. The most private, delicate space. And all of a sudden I'm in it, and I could be anybody. I could do anything at any moment. So he's vulnerable too. And he's got cat toys lying around everywhere. And I'm like, okay. So it was as if my vision of this man at first was just a pinprick, and that's all it is with you right now. All I can see, I don't know anything about any of you, other than just what I'm feeling. Not that that's not something, but I don't know the story. I don't know why or how. And then all of a sudden, he's more than just a crazy man yelling at me from the road. He's also a dude living alone with his cat. Good to know. Who else are you, man? I hope I get to find out. He opens up his fridge, he gets out this beer, and he's like, this is some dark beer, it's my favorite, you're gonna love it. He said it very begrudgingly, as if I were forcing him to do all this, But again, when you feel the imminence of connection, when its fruition is just right there, it's hard to walk away. Hard to walk away from that, at least in my experience, when it's just right. So he's, you're like that beer, You sit down and start drinking these beers, and he starts telling me these stories. And they're the loathsome kind of stories. They are violent. They are racist. They are filled with fear and prejudice. You know, and I'm receiving, I am judging, doing my best to just. And then he's telling some story, and he dropped in this little detail, almost as an afterthought, as if he hadn't even said it. He goes, you know, such and such and so, and I was really pissed off that day because I had to bury my son, and so then I went over here. I was pissed off that day because I had to bury my son, he said. My son died. My beloved son. My son. My son. I feel it right now in me. And that's what it was like. It was like he tore open himself for a second so I could see the truth, see a part of who he actually was, and a part of the story of why he was the way he was. And it did nothing to excuse the hatred and the violence and the racism and the shit. Nothing to justify it whatsoever. But it did make it impossible for me to hate this man now, knowing this little piece of him. It made me, once and for all, uninterested in deleting him from the story, eradicating him, even wishing he weren't here. I mean, and that's the interesting thing that we all get to grapple with in one form or another, is like, these people we just wish weren't a part of the story. You know? Like, you know, I can guess about what the political inclinations of most of you in the room are, given that we're in Vermont. I won't go there, but each one of us, you know, there's an individual or a group of people who's just like, God, if only those people, like, can't you just, you know? And it's with those people that we get to practice compassion. That's the place where compassion becomes more than just a naive puppy love. It's easy for me to have compassion with my mom. I love my mom. She's great. Easy. With my dad, too. Now. Took some time to get to that point. You can read about it, maybe. But I can have that with my dad. My friends, people I agree with, easy. But can I have compassion for someone, you know, like that? Do I have within me that inclination to do the very thing I'm resisting in them? You know, if I'm seeing someone who's so hateful, this man, do I find myself hating him? This man who's so prejudiced and wants, wants everything to be segregated. Am I segregating him? Am I wishing he were not a part of the picture? The only thing that I can really do with my life is look at that inside myself and begin to embody something different. I can't force him to change. So anyways, we're sitting there, we're drinking the beers, and eventually I feel like it's time to go. You know, I don't want to get stabbed, because it still might happen. And so I get up and say, hey, thank you for the beer. It's been really good to know you. And what's your name? I didn't get your name, man. He narrows his eyes again at me. And he goes, my name? My name's Bond. James Bond. I said, thank you, James. So I feel like every moment is a choose your own adventure, you know? At every single moment, you know, what's possible? Does it have to go the way it normally goes? You slap me, I slap you, we just do the thing again. What's possible? What is possible if I am willing to entertain the idea that you might have something to teach me? Yes, you, even James Bond. What might you have in store for me? What lesson might you be willing to share, knowingly or not? And when I approached people in that manner, I found that a lot was possible. And not to say that this is some magic bullet, and if we all just start listening to each other, it'll be fine. But I do think that without listening, there can be no wisdom. There can be no truth and reconciliation. There can be no understanding. I can't know who you are unless I know how to listen to you. Because only you know who you are. Only you can communicate you. And until I listen and receive all of you, I won't be able to understand you. And I'll be relating not to you, but to my assumption about who you are. My best guess, my projection. So I have to know how to listen to you, or else I'm just living in my own little delusional world, where it's not you who I'm relating to, but my assumptions about who you are. And day after day after day, my assumptions about people just came crumbling down. Because I was forced into encounters with them. I wasn't just driving by and just, the walk, I sort of put myself in a situation that forced me to pop the bubble day after day after day. And there was it was very clear that my assumptions were unreliable. Does anyone have a question?
Did you take notes as you were going along, or how did you manage to remember everything?
Oh, yeah. There was a lot to remember. I wrote down a lot. I journaled almost every day. And I had an audio recorder with me, and I recorded.
Like that gentleman, did you record him?
I did not record him. I didn't feel safe enough to do that. I was on what felt to me like a razor's edge of anything could happen, and so although I was putting myself out there, I was also taking care of myself. And I felt that introducing an audio recorder would send him off into some frightening place. But I did record a lot of conversations with the intention of remembering, and then with the intention of someday going over it again and doing something with it. I wasn't sure what. When I left home, I wasn't even sure how long I was going to walk. It's like, man, this might be like a weekend thing. You know, I might get out there and be like, I think I'm good. In which case, it would have made a great blog post. But it did become a year-long walk, almost.
Did you ever accept a ride, or did you literally walk?
I walked the whole way, with two little exceptions at the beginning, when I was still sort of figuring things out. But it was with the intention to walk the whole way, because I figured the slowness, the way that walking would force me to slow down. And I feel even in this talk, I try, I'm trying in my life at all times to just really slow down. I'm trying, but even I can still feel it going fast. So I thought the walk would be a helpful way of forcing me to slow down. And I wanted to find out what was possible within that slowness. Not just with people, but with myself. And with the earth. So...
You could have bicycled.
It would have been faster. It would have been faster. Is this a reading? I don't know what this is. But it reminds me of a little passage that I can read. It wasn't the one I thought I was going to read. Is that something that you all want, or do you?
Yes.
Okay, I don't want to just you want to hear me read my book. I don't want to assume anything.
While you're looking for it, that's correct. I'm interested in how you got to this idea of walking and what your goals were initially, and obviously how they evolved as you went through it.
Yeah.
Did you have this point of view about listening, or were you just venturing here to start?
So I graduated from college, and I wanted to spend some time before diving into a career, even a career that I thought I might like. I wanted to spend some time immersed in a situation that would take me face to face with the question, who am I? What does it mean to be me? far away from all the people who've been telling me who I am, even these beloved people, just far away from any familiar context. And on the frontier, the frontier of experience, of like discomfort, pain, lonely, like who am I in that? And what does it mean to come of age? I've read a lot about it, heard a lot of people talk about it. I have supposedly done it. But here I am, same questions, same confusion, same vague, ambiguous feeling of, what? So my intention was to ask those questions, and I applied for a fellowship to go study coming of age in indigenous communities, figuring that if I went to somewhere completely different, maybe I would learn something that my culture didn't teach me. That the village that I never had just didn't offer me. Didn't get the fellowship. Decided to pursue it anyways, and I had a few contacts in West Africa and Peru, and was people there offered to say, hey, sure. Got a job on a lobster boat to finance it. Got fired from the lobster boat before I made enough money. You can read about it. And said, okay, these questions are still hot and urgent. I don't have the funds I thought I was going to have. And whatever it is, it has to happen soon. Because I can't wait. I can't wait anymore. I'm not going to, okay, I'll apply for next year and then study this thing. And no, now. And then that's when the idea of this walk came to be. And I heard of people doing it, and I thought, maybe I could just walk out my back door. Why fly halfway around the world? Like, the answer is, what if they're right here? What if I look at everyone as my teacher? My people. Who are we? Who are we? I want to know. And so I wanted to wear a sign, just to be an invitation to people. And I thought, okay, what's the most honest thing I could say? Concise, pithy, could fit on a sign. And then walking to listen came to mind. That's really what I'm doing. I'm out here to listen, walking to listen. So I just kind of stumbled into this idea, lurched into it, and I had no idea what it actually was I was proposing to do. Listening. As I said, there was no listening class. There was no listening track at my prestigious, wonderful college. Nothing. You might get some training in listening if you were studying to become a therapist, but why just a therapist? Why aren't we all schooled in that? So anyways, I came up with this thing, and I would have to, as I say, lurch my way into learning how to show up to what I was proclaiming to do. And that only happened after hours and hours and hours of doing it and failing to do it, and getting mad at myself and trying again, and getting exhausted and upset. And
Did you ask a specific question?
I started out with that question of what is coming of age? What is, and I didn't want to limit it to coming of age. I wanted, what is transformation? What is transformation to you? When was a moment of transformation? And then eventually I felt that was too heavy-handed. I'd come up to someone and say, okay, what's transformation? Yeah, exactly. So I came into interactions with that same kind of reverence of like, yeah, I'm going to ask you a big question right now. I'm going to entrust this, not to my priest or my pope or my guru or my professor, but to you, Mrs. Owner of the general store here, of the gas station, whatever, whoever you are. I am going to ask you in that way, but just with some of the pressure off, So the question was there, the intention was there, but then it would just become about who are you? What's your song?
So I have done a little walking like this too,
Mm.
with a rubber encrusted and a rubber encrusted.
Mm.
And what was I gonna ask you? Oh yeah, what I sensed was an incredible thirst for being heard.
Could you say that louder, please?
Well, what we got was just this incredible thirst to be heard. Like people are hungry
Yeah.
to be listened to.
Yes.
And the entryway is that what you know, I just walked from Philadelphia.
Yeah.
And that's like, really? Okay,
Yeah.
I want to talk to you.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm walking the walk. I'm really doing it. I'm really doing it. I'm like this. No bullshit. I'm here to listen to you. And no, you don't have to pay me anything. No, you don't have to do anything. That's all. I'm not after anything other than your truth. Your song, I want to hear it. Thirsty, starving. I mean, dying for it. I mean, people, the way that so many of these people responded to that invitation made me realize the dearth of listening. And I think that dearth and that mass inability or unwillingness to listen is at the root of so many of our problems as a society today. And I can't point to you and say, okay, well here this study proves that then, but just think about it. I mean, what does it feel like to be deeply listened to? Deeply seen? Untouched. No one's trying to touch you and or throwing their shit. No, someone's just here, giving you space, so much space, silence, and then you can start to I mean, like you are doing right here for me now. I can like start to just, show you who I am. Sing some songs that I didn't even know I had in me. I didn't plan any of this, and here we go. And you're all gifting me with that. Knowing what that feels like. Okay, so take that, and then think about what it's like to not be listened to. To not, even when you're trying, and just not happening. Someone last week said, after the talk, said, when you're talking, I had this image come to mind. It's like, when you're being listened to, it's like you're being held. And given that we're more than our bodies, we are also hearts, and we respond. You can say something to me, and I'm going to be affected. You didn't touch me, but I still felt it. Given that we are more than our bodies, it's almost not a metaphor. It's literal. It's like someone's literally holding you. And so, if to be listened to is to be held in that way, what is the opposite? What is to not be listened to?
I'm gonna turn the tables on
Okay.
you. Did anybody ever turn to you and wanna listen to you?
On the road?
Yeah. Well, anywhere but the road.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the irony now is like I'm out here talking about listening, and I spent this year on the road listening to people, and now here you all are showing up to me in that way.
I meant on the road.
We're on the road.
Because we're captive audience.
Yeah, there were some people who knew how to ask a question and then listen.
To draw you out instead of
To draw me out.
listening to them.
Yeah, but it was very much a practice in listening
For you, yeah.
for me, and
No, I'll just ask you if anybody happened to turn it
yeah,
on you.
sometimes. It was rare though, because I think listeners are rare.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
it
that's
did
a long
happen.
time now to one into one.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and there were some connections like that. And I was also learning how to listen to myself, how to hold myself, which is fundamental to the ability to
Yeah,
hold
no,
it.
I understand what you're saying, but I just.
Oh yeah, no, and I know. I'm just having fun with it. Just, yeah. Thank you for that
How much
question.
were you alone?
I walked alone, and there were some times when some old friends walked with me for a couple days, but the walking itself was done mostly in solitude. However, at the end of almost every day, there was someone, or several people, and I found that balance was actually really important. Yes, ma'am.
Did you ever figure out
some of the reactions that people had to you? Like, did you walk away from this initial story you told and say, oh, I guess that man is now going to be a nice man because of my encounter with him? Or did anybody talk to you about, you really changed my way of thinking? Or do you, in your own mind, think, I wonder if I made a mark on that person? Did you think of that or have any evidence of it?
You weren't trying to, were you? Put a mark on anybody?
Yeah, I think that's probably the most honest answer. Yeah, I wasn't trying to do that, but of course we're all always doing that with each other, constantly shaping each other and influencing whether we realize it or not, like negatively or positively. It wasn't something I spent a whole lot of time thinking about. But experiencing what I did with many of them, and knowing that it wasn't just a one-way street, knowing that they were experiencing something, I know that, I know that it was an offering. And was it life-changing? For some of them, I think it was. But yeah, I don't know. It's in some ways it sort of feels like this book too. It's like, okay, I wrote the book. What you all do with it is yours. And I'll never really know what.
How did you get a publisher and an editor?
Grace.
Really?
Grace.
Still didn't get it quite right.
I was graced.
Oh, Grace.
Blessed.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's a whole other talk in and of itself. I was informed that after 45 minutes we start to, feel the fact that we've been sitting for 45 minutes.
But we want to hear what you were going to read too.
Did we?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can't get away.
Okay, well, I figured that was maybe past, but okay, maybe we'll finish with this. I'll keep it short. Why don't you just drive? That was one of the first things some people asked me when I told them what I was doing. The answer was simple. Sure, driving would get me there faster, but it would cut me off from everything in between the beginning and the end. And where was there, anyways? Something human is sacrificed traveling at high speeds, I came to believe, because humans are actually quite slow. When we walk, we are brought back to ourselves again, immersing our awareness in the body and all its sensitivities, creating space for the mind to breathe and explore and play. There's so much to feel, and there's nothing to distract you from feeling it. Walk long enough, and this immensity of feeling begins to blur the boundaries between you and everything else. One elderly man called it the white time. His name was Jerry Pretty. He walked 2 miles every morning, hadn't missed a single day since 1995. That was like walking across America 4 times. You amble along, he said, and it's like being whited out in a snowstorm. You can't see anything, and you're not aware of anything, and it's going on around you. It don't amount to a whole lot, but the sum total is, it's a beautiful experience when you get through. It clears your head. You're there. There was no such thing as boring in the white time, because everything was always in flux. The white time demanded my engagement. I couldn't just sit in it, as I would in a car, because I was my own vehicle. I was married to the movement. I was the movement. Each and every stride was an active stitch binding me to the land and to everyone I met. In this way, the road wasn't a contradiction like it would have been at car speed. When you drive, the car isolates and insulates you from everyone and everything you pass. It's a severing from the surrounding world. When you walk, however, the road takes you from the beginning to the end, not by severance, but by connection. Connection to the people you meet, to the land you touch, to the sun and the wind and the rain.
It's a great place to end the formal presentation, but I welcome everyone to ask him all the rest of your questions and have some cider and cookies and enjoy. So thank you very
Thank you.
much.